Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss how the government are falling back on their instincts to extract as much profit out of any situation as possible, even when it represents a humanitarian crisis, an inefficient use of public funds, and actually brings no obvious benefit to themselves. And when that happens, it's not even greed, it's just malice. However, in this case, I think I can also see how the government are using it to practical benefit as well. Benefit for themselves, not the country. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So you know how sometimes you'll see people using the phrase, just when you think this Conservative government couldn't sink any lower, they managed to dig deeper. Well, as far as I'm concerned, they long ago plumbed depths so deep that they are far underground and out of my sight. I don't know if there are any limits that they would ever observe. It's possible. I don't think most of them are evil as such. I think some are. I think the majority are just amoral. But my point is that I can hardly think of any act of depravity that they would not carry out. This particular case was a surprise to me, but I wasn't shocked as such. It just seems to be what they do. After over a week of the public, the media, and even Conservative MPs calling out for the government to do more to help Ukrainian refugees fleeing war and war crimes, the latest of which are now likely meeting the threshold for genocide, the government finally started to make some efforts towards setting up systems to allow people to apply for visas. Now, I discussed yesterday my objections to this against a backdrop of the rest of the continent waiving visas, but this is much worse. Ukrainians who are able to apply for UK visas are being held up in weeks of bureaucracy. This doesn't make sense. Until we found out yesterday that the Home Office are not actually carrying out the process themselves. They're using a private contractor. And you know the thing as well, just before I go on, when I said at the start, this is not only profiting from a humanitarian crisis and it's an inefficient use of public funds, but there's no discernible benefit to themselves. I've tried to have a look. Naturally, I can't find any evidence that this company donates to the Conservative Party. So I don't actually know what benefit there is even to the Conservatives with this. But here's the thing. Using private contractors just in general to deliver a public service is always wasteful. They're supposed to do everything that a nationalised service would do, but they need to make a profit on top. So they either have to charge us more or they cut corners with the service. And given that the chief executive of these companies retains their job on the approval of shareholders who want the profit, not customers who want the service, then the priority is profit. It's just how the system works. But you can get some operators who at least have a bit of professional pride and will try and deliver the service to a good standard. It may be more costly, so it's still not beneficial, but you get the service. Then there are the vultures. The private contractor that the Home Office is using to deal with Ukrainian visa applications, according to Open Democracy, only considered profit. We saw reports yesterday of a centre in Poland where people, including the very elderly, were made to queue up for hours in -3-degree temperatures. For hours. The centre would not even open its doors to let some people come inside. Even if they had to wait, even if it was like, we can't deal with you yet, but at least come out of the cold. No. And they would have had to wait because they were saying, I've got no more appointments till the end of April. Not actually kidding. Putin is bombing the hell out of their homes. Now having moved on to thermobaric ordnance. And for those who haven't come across the concept of this, not only does it flatten whole buildings, but you can look at what it did to Chechnya, but people caught up in it, even if they're sheltering underground, can have the air sucked out of their lungs, but they retain consciousness. So they suffocate whilst being fully aware but unable to do anything. Monstrous. And there are still more inhuman weapons that Putin has been known to use against civilian populations, like in Syria, that we can look forward to if not stopped quickly. And the people fleeing this are left out in literally freezing conditions and told that they cannot be seen for weeks. A deliberately inefficient system created with the sole purpose of making these people want to apply to a less suitable country as the path of least resistance. That is the aim. Put as many barriers in their way as possible so that they go down some other route. course, if you have family in Britain and you want to be reunited, if you can't live in Ukraine, your home, you'd at least like to be reunited with your family who may be living in Britain. The path of least resistance is actually to travel to Ireland, where there are no visa requirements, and then travel to Britain, where there are no obstacles. They can then claim asylum here or whatever. When Priti Patel found out about this, she apparently flipped her lid and angrily contacted the Irish Justice Minister to whine about drug dealers and criminals. Needless to say, Dublin told her to do one. Of course, if Patel was that bothered about drug dealers and criminals, she'd have had her cabinet colleagues investigated by the police and then turn herself over. But back to these private vultures, who go by the name of TLS Contact, and it turns out that Patel was warned about them last November. It was noted that they were so hell-bent, was the word used, on making profit that they posed a risk of reputational damage to the UK. They have, according to this report, received hundreds of millions of pounds of our money since 2014. A grim enough year in the history of Ukraine. Well, it's safe to say that the reputational damage has now been achieved. Can you imagine what the British tabloids would have to say if, let's say, France or Germany forced octogenarians to queue up for hours in below freezing temperatures when they had staff inside to open the doors and at least let them into the warm? But because they're doing it on behalf of the UK government, not a sausage in the media. And make no mistake, Priti Patel did not consider this warning of reputational damage to be a potential price to pay. She will have seen it as a benefit. While many of us looked on in horror at the way Ukrainian visa applicants were being treated and dismay when we heard it was the result of a private company, the Home Secretary would have been loving it. All part of the plan. Not a cost to be factored in. Part of the plan. A benefit. She will want the European media to be reporting this far and wide. And no, I don't mean out of petty malice, but for practical reasons. Well, how does that make sense, Phil? Well, bear in mind what Boris Johnson said in PMQs yesterday. When defending our piss-poor record on refugees, he said that we were contributing the most money to humanitarian aid. That's what the government want to do. It's not that they want no part in helping. They know that even their own supporters and MPs cannot stomach that. It also doesn't fit their global Britain narrative. So we have to help. We have to help. But they would rather chuck a few quid someone else's way to take our share of the burden. A bit like carbon tax credits. Instead of reducing carbon emissions, pay some other bugger to put it on their books instead. Same thing applies here. Imagine how this plays out. The UK gets a reputation for inhuman treatment of refugees. The thinking, whether true or not, is that if this becomes widely known, then refugees, it's like, oh, we need to flee our war-torn country, where should we go? They're not as likely to say Britain. In fact, they're quite likely to say anywhere but Britain. Britain would become a byword for brutality, and frankly, that's what they're trying to flee from. This is exactly what Priti Patel wants, I am sure. She wants to dissuade people from even trying to get to Britain. That way, she won't have to bother about the courts telling her that she's committing human rights atrocities. It's sick. But it's also self-defeating. Because such a reputation won't just affect refugees. That's what she's thinking about, but she's not very clever. It will also affect the mindset of economic migrants that she doesn't mind, like her parents. Remember that her immigration system actually makes it easier for foreign workers to apply for well-paid jobs in the UK than used to be the case before Brexit, if you're talking globally. A lot of the talk is of this tough immigration system that makes it harder for foreigners to get into the country. No, it doesn't. The points-based system makes it an absolute doddle for foreign workers to come into the country, as long as it's for a well-paid job. If it's for a poorly paid job, almost impossible then. Hence the need to force British workers to do those, while we let the foreign workers do the good jobs. But an economy the size of the UK's needs a lot of workers, more than we can provide. We do not have the population to power our economy. No major economy does, actually. Like even the famously difficult to immigrate to Japan, the huge population density, still relies upon a lot of migrant workers. And remember that these Ukrainians aren't claiming asylum as such. The Home Office has told them to apply for visas, so that's what they're doing. So it's visa applicants that are being treated badly. If this reputation for cruelty becomes established, it will badly hurt our capacity to attract workers from around the world. After all, when there are other major economies who would welcome their labour, Why would they apply to the UK where they're going to be treated like the shit on our shoes? And I've said this about the Conservatives before. It's a lot quicker to destroy than it is to build. The damage that they are doing to our standards of living, our infrastructure, our society, and our reputation abroad cannot be fixed overnight by even a very good government eventually replacing them. The damage will continue. And when it comes to reputational damage abroad, if you get it badly wrong, it can take generations to fix. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.